Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at the HOKA Clifton 9 and comparing it to the brand new Adidas Ultra Boost Lite. What's wrong with that? Before we get started, I do want to say these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one had a chance to preview this video. This file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. Now, both shoes we're taking a look at today are neutral daily trainers. The Clifton is incredibly popular with runners. A lot of people like it for walking and casual wear as well. The Ultra Boost has a unique history, started off as a really popular running shoe and kind of became known as a very heavy shoe as that Boost midsole got thicker and thicker, and Boost, relative to everything else, became known as a very heavy midsole foam. I think this changes here with the Ultra Boost Lite as it gets much lighter and becomes more of a running shoe. So I think these two particular models have a wide appeal both to runners and people who want a solid walking and casual shoe as well. As far as stats go, the Ultra Boost costs $190, which does put it on the pricier side of things. The Clifton, on the other hand, is pretty average at $135. The Ultra Boost Lite now weighs 10.5 ounces, which ironically enough is not that light in the grand scope of things. However, for an Ultra Boost, it is light, mainly because the Boost foam is now 30% lighter. So the Ultra Boost does come down substantially in weight, making it a truly runnable shoe, although still heavier compared to most other trainers out there, especially when we compare it to the Clifton, which comes in at 8.7 ounces, putting it pretty much average middle of the road for a shoe of this type. As far as stack height goes, this is a little bit tricky as this number is sometimes hard to come by and the methodology varies from brand to brand, but to the best of my ability, I think the stack heights are roughly comparable with 32 millimeters in the heel. However, the Hoka has a 5 millimeter drop while the Ultra Boost has a 10 millimeter drop. And if you're looking at this video and you're saying, Ryan, why does the Ultra Boost look so much larger in the heel compared to the Clifton? Well, that's a great question. And the reason is your foot sinks really low into that Ultra Boost material. So it's kind of like a wall of foam on the lateral and medial side, and your foot sinks further into the midsole compared to the Clifton. So it's kind of deceiving on the outside. You would think that the Ultra Boost Lite has a much larger midsole, and that's not necessarily the case just because of how it is sculpted. But roughly the same heel stack height. Clifton 5 millimeter drop, Ultra Boost Lite 10 millimeter drop. The uppers on these shoes are quite different. On the Ultra Boost Lite, we have a prime knit material, which gives you that sock-like feel. It is rather snug, hugs your foot rather tightly. You do have some elasticity in the toe box, and I think it does an excellent job of keeping your foot in place, even with that little bit of stretchiness to the prime knit. And part of the reason for that, I think, is these large midfoot cages. You have basically a large chunk of plastic on the lateral and medial side. I'm surprised to see this midfoot cage be so large. I think they can kind of reduce this in future iterations to help save on weight. But nonetheless, it was incredibly comfortable, although rather snug, and I felt like my foot was very connected to this platform. The Clifton 9 does have better breathability with its engineered mesh upper and a more traditional fit, giving you additional volume through the forefoot and midfoot compared to the Ultra Boost Lite. I'll also say the Clifton has a more noticeable arch sensation, which is kind of like classic Hoka. Fans of the Clifton will be happy to note that the Clifton 9 does give you, again, more volume through the upper compared to the Clifton 8, which I was pretty happy with the general overall updates here on the Clifton 9. So it comes down to what exactly you want. If you have a higher volume foot, I think the Clifton will be your friend. And if you have just kind of an average or more narrow foot, I think this snug prime knit upper will probably work better for you. The tongues are quite different as well. On the Clifton, we have a partially gusseted tongue. There's a small strip of engineered mesh on the medial side that keeps it from moving around. Has an average amount of padding and is a lower profile tongue compared to most other running shoes, and I think it works quite well on this setup. It's completely different compared to the knit tongue, which is integrated directly into that prime knit upper. It's rather stretchy, gives you a more seamless, consistent feel compared to the Clifton. However, knit tongues, like I always talk about, are kind of tricky because your foot has to be the right shape for the upper, because if it's too thin or too narrow, you have to pull the laces tight. And the tongue on a knit upper like this typically doesn't give you the best lace pressure protection compared to the Clifton, which is a little bit more dynamic in its fitting ability and does give you some relief from those laces if you really do need to kind of pull them tight to get a better fit. So just keep that in mind. I do have a minor personal complaint with something on each shoe. For the Ultra Boost, I found the lateral side of the ankle collar area just to be a bit too high. My ankle bone would keep on hitting this section here, causing some irritation. I don't know if that's just a Ryan problem, but for me, it was quite annoying once I wore this shoe for a long period of time. On the Clifton, similar issue. It's a little bit towards where the eyelets are, the forward area, which is a little bit too aggressive, and I'd have some rubbing on my ankle as well. Once I was able to position the tongue in place, that sensation went away, but you do have to take some time to make sure that the tongue is in the right position so you don't feel the top part of the lacing system. So some minor tweaks with the lacing system and just overall ankle collar area on both of these shoes, but those are my personal experiences. I'm not sure if everyone will have that, but I just wanted to let you guys know. Moving on to the outsoles, the Ultra Boost Light has full-length Continental tire rubber coverage, which is actually surprising to see how much rubber is on the shoe because, again, it's Ultra Boost Light, and you think they'd try to remove some of the rubber to help save on weight, and that is not the case here. I think in future iterations, we'll see rubber reductions and maybe some less plastic throughout the upper, but that's for a future video. For right now, though, we do have a rather smooth traction pattern, which works well on conventional surfaces. I think the Clifton might be a little bit more dynamic with its revised rubber formulation and deeper lugs, just because you have a little bit more grip if you do need it on something like gravel or grass, if you have to go in one of those different type of textures. So just keep that in mind. I think the Ultra Boost is a little bit better, again, for road running, and the Clifton gives you a little bit of versatility if you do have to take it on like off-road or something like that. The midsoles on both shoes have been reformulated. They both got lighter and bouncier compared to their predecessors. The Ultra Boost is probably the more drastic change, getting 30% lighter and 4% bouncier. And I will say that this revamped form of Ultra Boost is going to be bouncier compared to the compression molded EVA foam we see on the Clifton. However, the Ultra Boost Light has a more firm forefoot for a couple different reasons. Yes, there's a similar amount of stack height in the heel. However, the Clifton has a lower heel to toe drop of only 5 millimeters, while it is 10 millimeters on the Ultra Boost. So what does that mean? Well, it just means you have less foam under the forefoot compared to the Clifton. And there's something called an Adidas LEP system, which is essentially just a plastic plate. You can kind of see it. It's a small orange piece peeking through on the forefoot. And if you flip the shoe over, you can see that orange plate through the midfoot and forefoot as well. Now, this plastic LEP plate is supposed to stiffen things up, help with stability, and allow for some energy storage and release while you run. But because this plate kind of extends through the forefoot, that means there's going to be just less foam under your forefoot because part of it is plastic, especially when compared to something like the Clifton, which is just pure foam through and through. So I do wish that the forefoot was a bit more plush, just had a bit more Ultra Boost Light foam under it because it was a bit firm, especially for a shoe this heavy and large. And if you move to the rear of the midsole, you'll start to kind of notice the differences between these two foams. And I will say, I think Boost Light feels a little bit more bouncy, a little bit more lively compared to compression molded EVA foam, mainly towards the back part and midfoot of these two shoes. Again, in the forefoot, that's where I think the Clifton starts to shine through because it has a little bit more foam and no plastic there, like we just talked about with the Ultra Boost. If I had to pick between these two shoes for running, I'm going to go with the Clifton, even though I think the new Boost Light foam is a little bit more lively and just has more pop to it. Now, the reason I'm going with the Clifton is it's lighter, it's cheaper. I prefer the traditional tongue and lacing system. And yes, even though I had a small irritation point at the top of the lacing system, I was able to kind of nullify that with the tongue, get that in place, and it all went away. Unlike the Ultra Boost with the ankle collar area, my ankle just kept on rubbing. I also appreciate the fact that there's a bit more foam under the forefoot, and the Clifton, I think, represents a more versatile daily trainer. However, with that being said, I think Adidas has made a ton of progress with the Ultra Boost. This is a fun shoe to run in, especially if you're a fan of the Ultra Boost and you're like, oh, I can wear an Ultra Boost and it doesn't feel like I'm wearing a brick on my foot. The new foam, I think, is a huge step in the right direction, and I'm excited to see if they can kind of reduce some of the weight, kind of take off some of the plastic, maybe change out the upper, have like a performance Ultra Boost shoe on top of the one they already have, because I think as far as a lifestyle shoe goes, the Ultra Boost looks cooler and just has just an awesome silhouette to it. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if they could have a performance Ultra Boost, maybe engineered mesh upper, reduce some of the plastic, change the ankle collar area, reduce some of the rubber, and I think that would go a long way. But I'm happy to see that they have some new cool materials, especially with this Boost Light. But again, at the end of the day, with the current setup, I'm probably going with the Clifton for running. Well, that concludes the review. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think, or what shoe are you going to go with? I'm Ryan for Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.